How's it going, guys? Welcome to a new Proyecto Los Carnales. My name is Julio, and today behind me we have the Ram. This is my cousin's Dodge Ram, and what we're gonna be doing to it is right here. This kit we're gonna be installing is for a 2006 to 2008 6-inch lift on a 2-wheel drive Ram, and you guys could tell right away he's been taking care of it. It looks clean in the front, the updated headlights, grill. So he wants to run bigger tires on this because you guys could see it has an air compressor in the back. He uses this as a service vehicle for the trucks that they drive, so he wants to make it a little bit beefier whenever they go into an all-terrain place. So he was gonna put new tires, and instead he's like, you know what, I'm gonna just change up the whole style, lift it, and he came to me. So the kit, obviously with the 6-inch, consists of the actual brackets that move down the arms, spindles, coil spring spacers, and like all this stuff is for like the brakes, the hardware, sway bars, the new sway bar, the adapters, and you know, whatever's going on there, shocks. And then for the rear, these actual plates that'll lift it. So this is all the right there rough country suspension kit, and that's what we're going to be installing today on this thing. All right, guys, so that was the kit itself. Right now we're going to focus on tearing apart the front. We got a jack right here. We're gonna get some jack stands to hold on the frame, and then after that we're gonna do the rear. The rear should be a lot easier. We have the crane, we have a couple jacks, and this is a huge compressor. Like I said, he uses this for the service on the trucks they drive, and you could see a bunch of semi parts back here, U-bolts, leaf springs, and that's essentially what he wants it for. You know, personally, since we do have a vehicle like that too, it's always a lot easier when they have bigger, beefier tires, because there's times, man, when you carry 15 tires in the back of your truck, it'll make it squat. So with the lift and beefier tires, it does help it out a lot. So that's what we're doing on this, guys. Let me get started real quick. I'm gonna jack up the front, remove the tires, and then we'll take it from there. All right, so like mentioned, we have it now up in the air. It's on jack stands, wheels are off and everything. Pretty much you guys want to tear up the whole suspension, get rid of the control arm, spindles, lower arm, but you got to take it one step at a time. So we're gonna start by removing the brakes, hanging them up there with the little S wire I have. Make sure to remove the bracket, and we're gonna take off the tie rod and sway bar link. We're gonna remove the easier things just to get them out of the way first. All right, guys, so we removed the caliper like I mentioned. It's just two 13-16 millimeter bolts in the back. Make sure to hang it. We are going to replace the hose, but we just don't want it in the way right now, and we don't want to throw fluid everywhere before we move all the hard stuff out of the way. The shock absorber, the front shock, we removed those. Everybody's going to have different. The bottom bolts were 13 millimeter, the top was a 314 or 19 millimeter. You might have a different one based on what brand of shocks you use. And then the upper ball joint right here, we use the 7/8. The bottom ball joint, we use the 15/16, and the tie rod, we use the 13/16. All of them are loose. I got my little friend right here, Mr. Hammer. We're gonna hammer and get everything loose real quick right now. The other thing I did, I personally just do this while, you know, the spindle's still on. The back of the hub is just the 18 millimeter socket for these bolts. I take all three of them out in like a minute. 3 bolts, I just use a rubber mallet and a ratchet, and it just comes out just as fast as grabbing the impact and doing it. But I just find it easy. I'd rather tear it apart while it's here. You could take off the spindle and then do it, but I'd rather get this out of the way so I could actually swing at the lower ball joint and the tie rod and the upper one while it's free. But once you have the 3 bolts out, guys, let me grab this real quick. We got the 3 bolts out of the way. We got our hub, our dust shield for the brakes. Now we could actually hammer at the correct spots and not have any issues with dealing with anything. Our sway bar links out of the way. The upper nut that we took off of here was a 5/8 or 16. The bottom was an 18 millimeter. I just need to take off the other side to move this up, and then we'll get that out of the way. But you guys could see the front's not too hard to disassemble. All I'm gonna do now is just swing at the ball joints and the tie rod so I could actually get them unstuck or loosen them, and then the spindle and everything else will fall apart. All right, guys, so we got the whole front end disassembled on both ends. You guys could see that's the driver's side. We're on the passenger side over here. And from here, we removed the calipers. Yeah, guys, so we swapped the brake calipers because we're gonna change the hoses anyways, and the old ones were leaking. So we just decided to get rid of everything. Now, guys, the next step is gonna be installing these. When we install these, we're gonna be able to set the lower control arm and move on to the rest of this. All right, guys, so now we have the bars already installed down here. We're just gonna line them up in a little bit, but you guys can see the new, this is the front one, and then that's the rear one. So those are now on. Obviously they're not bolted and torqued or anything because we're still gonna put the lower arms. Before we get to that though, we're gonna put the coil spring spacers, and those are right here. All right, guys, so the coil spring spacer is right here. So this thing has like a small slant when you put it down, and it is directional. So the second ones are it's over there already, but you guys want to look for this arrow. This arrow is going to be next to the frame, so the frame has to be right here, and the arrow points to the front of the truck. Now, another cool thing is these little things right here. So these, it's a two-piece. This one's by itself, and this one's a dual. I'm gonna show you guys in a second. We're gonna set it up, but essentially these are gonna sit, sorry about that, these are gonna sit something like this, so you guys could actually bolt up where it goes. But this is how it's gonna look when it's in there. Let me go over to the truck and show you guys exactly what we're gonna be doing. All right, guys, so we're under this truck now, and this is the original coil seat. And you guys could probably look in here. There's a good gap. So right here is where you guys are gonna put those bolts I showed you. Now, right here, you guys could see that this has a little sleeve for the coil. So that's how you're gonna know. That has a sleeve, that doesn't. So this side is the one that goes up. And you're gonna look for the arrow. Let me get a good angle on this. So the arrow's right here. You guys can see it has the arrow right there drawn out. So we're gonna put that facing the front of the vehicle. So with that facing the front of the vehicle now, this is essentially how it's gonna look. You're gonna mark the bottom of it, drill out some holes, and then put in those bolts like I showed you. Now, I am a one-man team right now, so we're gonna use a jack. We have a jack right here so it can hold it up in place, and we're gonna get our mark saw and then come actually mark the holes so we could drill them out. All right, so we got the jack, got a piece of wood, that way it holds this with some pressure. Now, when you're under here, these holes real quick, I'm gonna just use a quick mark saw so we could actually mark out where we're gonna drill out the holes. And these are gonna be to a 7/16 bit. I'm gonna use 3 different stages. Obviously start with a smaller one and work my way up, that way I just don't kill the bit right away. But let me mark this real quick and then we will be back. All right, so we already drilled the 3 holes. 1, 2, 3. Right there's my first bit's pretty thin, then make it wider, and then finally the 7/16 bit. After that I kind of deburred it a little bit, but obviously set this up, the holes line up, everything was good. So now we have these little brackets. We're gonna push the first bracket through. I'm gonna show you guys. So the 2-point bracket is gonna be side by side by the frame, so you're gonna want to kind of angle it in there and then throw it towards the top. And then for now you can leave it alone. You guys should probably be able to see right there that it's sticking out the hole where the original shock went through the bolt. You guys can even see the bushing and the little washer for it right there. But right now we don't really need to line it up too well. The single one is the one that has a lot more play and will actually fall through. So this is the one that it's gonna go right here on the edge. You're gonna want to set it up so it's right there just hanging on. It's up here. Right now I'm gonna just get a little bit more comfortable. Obviously guys, you guys could tell These are supposed to be right there where you see the threads, the bolts go through and everything. I can't really record and set up the bolts and hold this bracket at the same time, so I wanted to show you guys how I set up to it. So once we're here, I'm gonna just pick up the bracket, put the bolt through, and then with the other hand be fishing out from the top right here where you guys see my finger. First one to get done is this one, then you can move on to this one and then move this one to its correct location. See, this one already fell through, and I was just trying to demonstrate, but yeah, this one just goes up there. You just line up the two threads. It's hard to kind of keep it stable. You just line up the threads and then you're good to go. But for now, we're just gonna kind of push it off to the edge a little bit so it's out of the way, so we could mess with the single one first. All right guys, so like you guys saw, we have the 3 bolts. There's 1, 2, and 3. And you could see the top view of this. The top view, there's a little brackets right there that are actually holding on, and then through the bottom view you could kind of see them up there. So this is on here, it's secured. I already tightened it, it's not going anywhere, and that's how your actual coil spring spacer should look like. So now our coil spring should go right here, right under it, and then bam, just it links up right here. We just need the lower arms. Once we put the lower control arms and start setting things up. All right guys, so we got the bottom brackets on. These are the extenders for the lower arms, and what you guys want to know is how to tell the front and the back. The front's gonna have the logo facing the front, that way you'll know where this little dip is supposed to be and everything. So aside from that, you have to use the supplied hardware. Big reason for that is it has a huge square, that way it lines up perfectly in the center. So when you take it to alignment, the alignment gets done where the actual arms are and not on the actual lift kit itself. So make sure you use these huge blocks. They're gonna fit in perfect in here. Well, make sure they fit in perfect right here. Make sure to line them up correctly. That way down here it has the alignment for when you put the original hardware. This is gonna be the alignment key right here they could use. So we have the lower brackets on here, so it could actually get lowered. Like I said, make sure those are on. That's the front. The back looks exactly the same, but right here's where the nut goes. And then you could tighten it just a little bit, but don't torque it all the way down until you put the bottom. You want to fix and fit everything before you actually start tightening and torquing. That way you make sure it's all good and in order. But that's the bottom braces for the lower arm. After this, we're gonna move over to the coil spacers and get started there. All right, so all we're gonna do is put on the upper control arms right now as well. We took them off because we replaced the ball joints, and then put the lower arm, set up the spring, and start putting in the new spindle. All right, so this is the upper view. Another thing to note, I did zip tie this tie rod up here. That way it wouldn't be in the way, because when I had the zip tie wasn't on, you guys could see it's right in the way of you actually drilling and doing everything, and it was just a headache, so I just zip tied it. There's a small hole right there. Just lift it, zip tie it, get it out of your way. It's gonna save your life, believe me. All right, so we got the top bars on, we have the bottom frames on. Our next step, we're actually gonna install the new bump stop, and this is what that bracket looks like, guys. It looks like a funky bracket. You're gonna need the actual bump stop itself. All right, so this is a bracket for the bump stop that's gonna go up here, and then down in the bottom is where you're gonna put the new bump stop, which is this. You're gonna need out of the bag one of these short bolts, a long bolt, and a couple of the washers so you can put them on. To do this, it's just a 50mm wrench, a socket, and a flathead. All right, so for the bump stop with the flathead, you just kind of like wiggle it in the edge and pop it out. It just has like some push-in retainers, but it's nothing out of this world. You guys can see it just comes out super easy. You could scrape up here a little bit. There's probably some rust, there's some dirt stuck in there, and then you're good to go. So this is our bump stop, and this is our bracket. You guys could see the bump stop has a hole in the center, and there's another hole on the side. This angle is gonna be for this. It's gonna set up exactly like this. I'm pretty sure you guys could see. So that's why we have our 2 bolts. We're gonna put the long bolt right here. Let me shove it in there real quick. we're gonna put the long bolt right where the actual bump stop used to be, and then the short bolt we're gonna put in through the back. You can fit your hand back here and then just put the bolt through. So our next setup is to just push this through, and then we're gonna put in the washers and the nuts in the bottom, and it's a 15 millimeter that I'm using for the wrench to hold it, and then a socket to tighten in the bottom. I'm gonna do this real quick with both hands, and I'll show you guys the end result. All right guys, so there it is, nice and bolted up. You guys can see the 2 bolts barely in there, but this is the bump stop bracket. All you have to do now, the bump stop has a hole down here, and you guys can see the threads. You just put your actual nut on there and you just twist and tighten it, and you're good to go. So that's it for the bump stop. Now we're just gonna switch over, put on the lower control arms, and I'll show you guys that. All right guys, so we got the spring in here. You guys can see where it's seated on the spring spacer, and we have the lower control arm in the bottom. How you guys can see, you guys can tell, we have the jack in the bottom. We put it as far up in the edge when it was still open all the way, and you slowly jack up until you get it to a comfortable position where it looks like it'll fit the spindle and everything correct. So with the jack, you lift the lower control arm, and then the spring stays in the middle. Remember, it has a guide in the bottom where it's supposed to stop. The top has a seat, so that one doesn't really matter because it's meant to be like that, flat. So what you want to do after this to lock everything into place, you want to set up your spindle. How you set up your spindle with your ball joint, you want to start with the lower ball joint. You have it down here, you have the nut for it, which is our 15/16. We have all that in standby. So you slip it in the bottom, you twist it all the way so you could, with the weight, it's going to help you resist it if you pull it towards you with one hand, and the second hand you should be able to actually just tighten it back here. So as long as you get a handful of threads in there, you're good to go. You guys just seen it slip, it's not going nowhere. All right guys, so we're installing the upper control arm. So we changed the ball joints like I had mentioned. The ball joint's new. To remove it and install it, you literally just need an 18 millimeter socket for the bolt. The nut, Chevy, Chrysler makes this little thing. Every single one of them broke. The ones that I was doing, you guys could probably tell right there, maybe not, but all of them broke. So I just threw a couple little really crappy looking tacks, but they're gonna hold. Definitely recommend you doing this because it's gonna make a difference. So then all you have to do is put it on and tighten it. And then we're gonna go back with the long reach ratchet and actually tighten it all the way. But the upper control arm does not have the alignment post like the lower one. So these, we just get them as tight as we can and we're pretty much done. All right, so we got our upper control arm a little bit tight on already. Just gonna lift it up, drop it down into roughly where it goes. And there we go. Now that it's on, we're just gonna put the nut in the bottom, and after this start tightening everything. So on these newer ball joints, if you guys are replacing them, the socket's a 13/16. In the lower one, it's still a 15/16, and the tie rod is a 13/16. So I'm gonna just go ahead and tighten everything real quick, and we'll be back. Our next setup is gonna be the brakes and the sway bar. All right, the upper ball joint's tightened. We have the cotter pin on and everything. The lower one isn't. Once you lower it and actually the spring gives tension to the lower ball joint onto the spindle, now it's going to be tight enough for you to tighten the lower ball joint by itself. So we're going to move on. Remember, you have the hub, it's 3 18 millimeter bolts. Push those through with the dust shield and the hub, and then just tighten it. So I'll be doing that next. All right guys, so I just pretty much fast forwarded through everything. You guys saw me put the lower arm. You pretty much just squeeze the arm with the spring in the middle. So make sure to line up the spring. You'll see where it goes. The seat's up here, that goes with the coil actual spacer. And then you put in the new shock. It's a 13 millimeter bolt in the bottom, and then in the top it's a 15 millimeter. They do provide a couple little slots on the spacer for you to be able to access it, so you could tighten up the top of the shock. The other thing I did is just put on this actual spindle, and then in the bottom it's the original 15/16 millimeter. This new one's a 13/16. We changed the ball joints. This is a castle nut with the cotter pin, and you guys already know the tie rod's also a 13/16. So I'm gonna just tighten all that up real quick and then put on the hub, and then we'll be able to switch over to the other side. All right, so we put the dust shield in the hub. It's only the right there 1, 2, and 3 bolts that come in from the back with an 18mm. I put them on when they're on here because I feel like it's more secure. I'd rather do this than use the impact. Hey, quiet. I'd rather do this method with a long ratchet and pull on it with the extra pipe, because I've used the impact before and it's stripped, so I'd rather not go through that no more. After the hub, all we have to do is put the rotor and the caliper, but this kit does come with a brand new brake line hardware. It ends with P for passenger, D for driver side. All you need is a 12mm wrench to actually loosen the hose. The hose is now loosened, and down here it's just a 13mm socket. All right, so after we take off the bolt for the bracket using our 13mm, the whole hose literally comes out. That's our trays we have down there for each side for the brake fluid to accumulate. And this new hose, how you took off the old one is how you put it on. You just fit in the hose right here with the 12. This bolt goes through on this little bracket area. And I'm gonna just tighten that real quick and get this thing ready to put the caliper back on it. The rotor just slips on in the front. There's no way you can mess that up. But I'm gonna put this together real quick, come back with the caliper, and then we'll finish off in the front. All right guys, so here's the sway bar itself. Do yourself a favor, change the sway bar bushings. I want to say I paid like maybe $8 for a 2-pack, but it has this little bracket right here. It looks like a big C channel. The side that's adjustable is use the original bolts, bolt that to the frame, and then it comes with a little bolt washer nut, so you could actually bolt the existing bracket for the bushing to the new relocation bracket. So the original one is a 15mm. This is gonna be a 5/8 or 16mm, but that's pretty much it on both ends. It's gonna bring it forward, that way you can use the new sway bar links that are in the kit. So I'm gonna just tighten this up real quick, and we're gonna go to the links next. All right, so the next step after putting the actual bushings with the bracket is the links. It has these like metal U-bolts. You have one on the top and you have one on the bottom right here. So pretty much you guys see it has a little curve right here. You want the curve to go up and then come in, so it actually reaches the sway bar link and doesn't go out. I pretty much set up everything super loose, and then afterwards I go back in and tighten everything. So now that I have it, you know, in the position I wanted and everything how it shows, now I'm gonna be able to tighten it and then take it from there. All right guys, so this is pretty much most of the final product right here. We have the sway bar links. Those are pretty simple to install. Like I said, put everything loosely and then tighten it. Make sure you have the inner angle going inside. We did test for clearance. Everything looks like it turns fine, so there's no issue there. The brake hose that was just hanging, we just put the brake caliper and the bracket back on with the new pads and rotor. So the actual caliper pad is a 13/16. The caliper to caliper bracket is a 13mm, and then over here this one was an 11mm. So we tightened it, we bled the brake system, and then that's pretty much it. So all I'm gonna end up doing, I don't see any real spot to do it, but this hose has like this little rubber part right here that actually says rough country. I'm gonna just zip tie that part right here to the actual spindle, so it's not in the way of any moving objects. But that's pretty much it for the front, guys. Pretty simple, straightforward. I think the hardest part of this was the drilling part, because you're drilling upward and it kind of gets in your arm. So my suggestion, wear a long sleeve when you get to that part. But we have everything else nice and tightened. We went back, don't forget, go through every single bolt and retighten everything. Make sure everything's on, especially the lower control arm, because that one's supposed to be put on loose. When everything's on, then you tighten it. So make sure everything's nice and tight and snug. We're gonna put the wheel on, and then we're gonna move to the back. All right guys, so we're down to the last, which is the rear and these blocks. So these blocks, the shocks, new U-bolts, here's the hardware, is obviously off for the rear of this truck. So let me sneak in real quick and show you guys. What you're gonna want to do is lift the actual frame Luckily this thing has a tow ball slash tow hitch, so we're gonna grab it from there to lift it up. But you could put a couple jacks, whatever you need, so you can actually just lift the frame. Do not lift the differential, because then you're not gonna do nothing. When you lift the frame, you're gonna be able to stretch this out so you can get those U-bolts out. Once those U-bolts are out, once those bolts for the U-bolts are out, the frame will actually lift off of the differential and then give you enough space for that block. So I'm gonna go ahead and lift this real quick and remove those bolts. I'll come back and let you guys know the size, and then we'll put on those blocks, set it down, and then tighten it up again. So we have this skid steer at our disposal right now. We have the tow bar right there, too lazy to get 4 jack stands and a jack, so we're just gonna make it do. Dale tantito para atrás. Cualquier cosa. There. Lift the spoon a little. Poquito más. Poquito más. Creo que muere. You want to turn it off? All right, guys. So after all that sketchiness with the skid steer, we did it just to have a couple laughs and giggles, but it actually ended up working. So here we are, guys. This is the lift block you're gonna put. I'm not sure if you could tell right here from this angle, but the short side of the block is facing forward. The big side is facing back, and it obviously goes towards the angle of the truck. The new U-bolts supplied with the kit, and the new U-bolt hardware up here, the washers and the bolts. These new ones that came in my kit are a 7/8 millimeter. I'm gonna just tighten them to spec right now and torque them down, and pretty much be done and call it a day for the rear lift. Don't forget, you have your new shocks. These actually, where did I see it? I think I seen it right here on the side. It actually tells you which side is the top side. So you put the top side on, you put your bolt. These bolts were a 13/16 that I used to take off, so I'm gonna just put them back on both sides. I still need the one over there, and then once that's done and the rear's bolted up, I'll be back and show you guys how it looks. But don't forget, you got 1 bolt on the top, 1 in the bottom, and then 4 bolts for the U-bolts. All right, guys, so it's been a couple of days and we waited because he ended up getting some 20s with 35s. And then my cousin Andy's Ram, finally the full lift is already done, and that's 20s on 35s, perfect offset, barely sticking out the edge, LED everything on it. All right, guys, to finish out the video, that's the transformation right there. RC in the bottom. Got this Dodge looking clean, LEDs all around. He had to get the actual rock lights to show off.
Had to get the new headlights, the new fog lights, bumper and grille with the Dodge emblem delete, because it no longer identifies as a Dodge but as a Peterbilt.
I thought you were going somewhere with it. I was like he got the rock lights because he's gonna show off these beautiful 20-inch rims with 35-inch tires. So if you guys look, there's no cutting anywhere on this. He got this lift kit. It has the smallest of an offset, barely sticking out. It's not sticking out right here. It's just right where it should be. 20s, 135s all around. And then the rear has no issues at all with any kind of hitting or anything. So the rear is perfect, the front's perfect, the wheel sits just right. And then with this current offset, like I mentioned, it's roughly an inch that sticks out, and it's roughly an inch that sticks out in the front. It's not crazy outrageous where it sticks out a lot more than the other side. All right, guys, so we're finishing off the day and we got Andy right here with us.
What up, guys? Want to say shout out to my cousin Julio and my cousins for helping me out fix up my beautiful Ram. It's a slow process, but hey, we're getting there, you know.
Yeah, guys, like I mentioned, we did the lift. We got many other things in store. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe. If you have the same vehicle, let us know if this helped with your lift. If you have a drop, you know, shoot over pictures of your drop. Whatever you guys have, let us know. And if it helped, Give us a thumbs up.